One gets a bit tired of the aggression in the world when it comes to any particular subject. There seems to be us and them on every particular issue, and the reason recently in the climate change conversation they had in Glasgow, not many people said anything really positive what they could do about it. There wasn't actually any practical action proposed that reduces the world's consumption and therefore the CO2 in any way that gives confidence to those people who are in charge that they know what they're doing in this thing, in the idea of that. The lack of practical honesty involved in this is a concern, and especially when we hear the criticisms of China, we stayed away from it. Now, I can't blame them because it's difficult for people to understand. The situation in China is very different to what it is in Germany or England or Australia or anywhere else. I'm not making an excuse for China or the CCP. I just want to state some geographical facts that may create understanding in this world, because acrimony, you can get very, very tired of acrimony, enmity and hate and all that, and all the threats of war and violence and the sort of thing really is you can get tired of that. It lacks intelligence, quite frankly. Because people don't understand China is a very large place with 1.4 billion people, and many of them live where it's extremely cold in winter. Many of them live, it gets minus 20, minus 30 degrees in winter. You're above about 35 to 4 degrees north, it can be quite cold, and then when you go inland, it gets intensely cold in China. As a cold dense air comes down off the Himalayas onto the Chinese plain. And now they've had some terrible floods in China. I mean, they're all human beings. They've had terrible floods in China on and off for a year, so that's damaged a lot of farmland and maybe caused food shortages. Now, what China's got to do is, first of all, if it wants to consider whether it's involved in climate change, it is planting an awful lot of trees in the desert, which is a commendable thing because it takes in CO2. That seems to be the common sense approach, is to take CO2 out there by planting trees. Seems to be extremely common sense and pragmatic approach, which the Chinese are common sense people and pragmatic basically at the heart. They will sort things out pragmatically. They will not be lectured by others, and neither should they be. They're an independent sovereign nation, and they like to work things out their own way. Now, because it's so cold in China, you can't run solar panels. You can't keep billions of people warm. 70 million live above the cold in the cold parts of China, wherever it is. You can't keep them warm with solar panels or wind generators. You have to have a means of generating the thermal capacity to distribute power to all those people to keep them warm in winter. The alternative to using coal in power stations is everyone in their houses having a coal-fired power, just having a coal fire to cook on, which creates an awful lot of smog. And what China's doing to try and cut down that smog, which is a massive amount of smog because those fires are inefficient and cause a lot of pollution, because those cause a lot of pollution, all those hundreds of thousands or millions of fires, coal fires, which they do use a briquette and they burn it. Not only do they burn poor quality coal, but it smokes. The fires are inefficient. And so therefore, we have to look at it from the Chinese perspective. They've got to keep those people warm, and that's why they're building coal-fired power stations. They continue to build them because they need to replace. Remember, China's still restructuring over. It's still restructuring. It's still got people living in very basic conditions in China. There's millions of them still Millions live all right in cities, but still millions of them living in villages in very basic conditions most people in the West could not stand to live in. So the problem in China is not that it doesn't want to act on climate change. It is acting on climate change. It doesn't want criticism for what it's doing when it can't do anything else but keep its people warm. And it has to, it's either have lots of coal burning in lots of individual houses, and it's a terrible problem, smog problem, or have brand new clean Healer power station, which basically are high efficient, high pressure coal-fired power stations that they can generate energy to keep people warm and run things and run lifts and sewage and water systems and railways and all those things that need to be run on a regular basis on all that massive cities they've got. Need to be run. The government's got a responsibility to look after its people. It takes that seriously. Regardless of any criticism of the Communist Party, it takes its obligation to people quite seriously. I'm not one to criticise people for the sake of criticism. And in this respect, I can't criticise them, whatever I think about the climate. I can't criticise people acting to keep people warm in winter. And they are reducing the amount of smog because of the way they reorganising how the power is generated. And they are moving to gas. And they are moving to nuclear fuel. But you can't run solar or wind when it's minus 40 degrees or minus 20 degrees. And I suggest people, before they criticise China any further, should do a little bit of geography, a bit of study of China, and find out the geographical layout of it, and try to understand the problems they have. Try and put yourself in the position of the leadership there, and ask yourself, what would you do in the position of the leadership? If you cannot put yourself in the position of somebody else in their position and try to understand where they're coming from, then you've got no right to criticise. We get tired of people criticising with no answers. Criticising just for the sake, or we're going to criticise China, just for the sake of criticising China. And I find that reprehensible. We can all criticise each other. We can all be criticising each other, but it's not constructive. It doesn't create good rapport. It doesn't create friends in the world. We should try to understand why India is the way it is, why China is the way it is, why America is the way it is. And forgive them for what they are and what they're doing. Because understanding allows that. And this generates peace in the world, not enmity. It's a very, very great concern. Climate change is a problem, but it's still very, very snow, very, very cold in winter. And this winter in particular is going to be extremely cold in the Northern Hemisphere if we understand geography and geophysical situations on this planet. If we understand that, we have some background in analysing that, we know that the cold is going to be very, very cold in winter in the Northern Hemisphere this year because of the amount of moisture that's in the air. I think the Chinese are wise to prepare for that. And criticism, it's global warming is an idea, but it's a global warming. It's an idea. But if you have, is it minus 20 and it's only then it's going to be 1 degree warmer. It's a minus 18.5. It's not much different. It's still pretty cold. I'm not making excuses for anyone. I'm just stating some facts. China's got a very, very serious problem dealing with the amount of people it has and changing its energy situation. It can't do it overnight. They're doing it as fast as they can. It's about time there's less belligerence in the world and more understanding. If you want to sort this climate change thing out, you've got to cooperate. Got to cooperate. Not in enmity. You can't sort anything out. You have to cooperate on it.